Psychopath alert.
Do you know why?
Just be respectful, please. That's all.
Violence, because people are so divided. They do not want this. Charlie did not advocate for empathy in his time of death. Charlie wanted guns to kill people. He said it himself. He said it was the price of having guns.
You're a psycho.
Yeah.
Psychopath alert.
Psychopath alert.
Just be respectful, please.
That's about right. Let's get rid of that. Jeez. Well, before we get going on that, how about we watch another one? Let's turn down the volume a little bit. Here, have you guys seen this one?
Here's my note to my family and shit. Wow, some English writing. Wow.
So,
Hope you can read that.
So if you don't know what you just watched, that was the written manifesto of the Minnesota trans shooter. I don't know, Rob something or another. But I don't know if you have ever seen that or if you were watching carefully. Let's just watch it one more time and see if you can see what I saw when I was reading through it. Again, let's make it a little bit bigger.
Here's my note to my family.
Can't really see it, I guess, huh?
Wow,
See it?
English writing. Wow.
No? Well, here,
Hope
lucky
you can
for
read.
you, I have prepped a screenshot of that. So let's pull it up here. To my mother and father, I am sorry I didn't turn out as you had hoped. You did not fail me. You gave me so much. Then I highlighted the relevant portion. I truly appreciate the love you have given me. I feel I was raised to be a good person. I've kept these traits of empathy, self-sacrifice, and great character. Please do not think you have failed. Well, he's kept the traits of empathy. This is the guy here. Let's bring up. Oops, we don't need to watch him again. Good grief. Let's get rid of that. This is the guy who shot up a Catholic school and killed an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old and 17 others. Actually, and I don't. This is old information, so it could have, the fatalities may have gone up, but I think it was 2. This is a person who says he has kept the traits of empathy. So, yeah, I believe we would call that guy a nut job. Now, even before the events of the last, I guess it is almost 10 days now, and even before I happened to read the manifesto of that psycho, I've been thinking about having a podcast or doing a video about empathy. And then the thing with Charlie Kirk came up, and I realized, it's time to have that conversation. It's, we need to talk about it. Now, whether or not the right people will hear about it is an entirely different question. And whether or not, even if they did hear about it, they would change their views. That's another question. And to be perfectly honest, I I don't actually expect to change a lot of minds with this one. I expect I'll be doing a fair bit of swearing, for example, because this guy who says he has kept the traits of empathy, but then went and killed a couple of kids. I'm sorry, but you're an asshole. You're not a good person at all. Yeah. So, how do you talk about something like this when when you don't really have anything good to say about the other side? So, with that in mind, I think it would be a good idea to look at some of the Charlie Kirk responses and reactions here to give us an idea of what the empathy poison actually looks like in our society. So I do have some. I showed you this one at the very beginning. Let's look at it again and just listen very carefully to what she says.
Psychopath alert.
Like me. Do you know why?
But just be respectful, please. That's all.
Violence, because people are so divided. They do not want this. Charlie did not advocate for empathy in his time of death. Charlie wanted guns to kill people.
Oh, she's so hard to watch. So if we understand this chick correctly, he didn't advocate for empathy, so it was all right for him to die. Like, he did not deserving any pity whatsoever for him or his family or anything like that. Let's look at a couple of others, and then we'll start talking about them here. I have some here. Here we go. Here's this one. Actually, maybe I'll wait on that one because we may as well.
The sympathy for Charlie Kirk is fucking weird. There seems to be this weird emphasis on taking the moral high ground and that you are somehow a better person if you're like, I feel bad for his family. This is the world he wanted and the world he was building. This is a white supremacist who wanted both of us dead. He was shot in the middle of saying something transphobic about trans people. And yet you want to have sympathy for him. You don't have to like violence, but I'm confused as to how you thought the revolution was going to be magically bloodless. Where is this sympathy for Palestinians, for the Sudanese people, for the Congolese, for the black people in America that are killed at the hands of police violence, for the black trans women that are being murdered for simply existing? Why does this sympathy extend to a white supremacist, but not to the communities that actually need your care? I think that people are afraid they're going to...
Okay, so we'll actually come back to that in a minute, I think. But I know what I'll do. I don't have I'll show some memes, I guess. We'll do it that way. Unfortunately, I've got so much stuff here. Here's one. So this is there's the information about this person. Okay, here. Just came on here to say Charlie Kirk can rest and fucking piss. And yet again, if you have any empathy at all for people like this, you can go ahead and remove yourself as my friend. It's unclear if she means remove yourself as my friend, like from Facebook, or like, kill yourself. I don't know. Could go either way. I do not give a fuck about the death of a person who devoted his entire life spreading racist, xenophobic, misogynistic rhetoric. It's hot as fuck where this man currently is, and it's deserved. So what's interesting about this, like if we were going to talk to this person who goes to the University of Illinois, Chicago, works there. I have no idea if she was fired or not. There's no way that this woman believes in hell. She doesn't believe in heaven. She doesn't believe in Jesus. She doesn't believe in anything, really. So it's interesting that she thinks that Charlie Kirk is anywhere, which is actually a point that we will return to. So here, and then I have another one here. I think you're getting the gist of it. And if you've been awake at all in the last 10 days, you know exactly what I'm talking about with all this stuff. Oops. I should have one more here. Here we go. Oh, nope. That's a different one. So I could go on and on and on talking about the Charlie Kirk thing. But I'm focusing explicitly on the empathy angle for this episode. And the thing about what we're talking about is that as you have seen in the memes and the videos that I just showed, and you can go online and find them all on your own. The people who invoke empathy as like this highest virtue are very quick to exclude people from being worthy of their empathy as soon as it becomes something that they find however they want to describe it, hateful or whatnot. Just so that we have something on the screen here, I'm gonna bring up my notes. Kind of, I'm not saying it's going to keep me on track or anything. But it's wild to me that they have, when they've come around to talking about the leftists we're talking about here, why we should not feel bad and actually should be very happy that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, is that he was a bad person. So empathy apparently is something that only applies to the bad people, except for there's Hitch, right? If we go back to our shooter here, the Minneapolis shooter who invoked empathy in his manifesto, who said that he was an empathetic person. There's no way that an 8 and 10-year-old could possibly be the hateful person that one might expect, or like that one would consider worthy of being executed, right? There's no way. And of course, this person aimed for a bunch of kids. And if we read the story, it's and this is old information, as I said, so I don't really he shot where is it? It was here before. 17 people, I think. It's here somewhere. It doesn't really matter. It was a lot, right? And they were all kids. Okay, there's no way in the universe that you can look at an 8 and 10-year-old and say that kid's a Nazi and does not deserve my empathy. So what we have as one of the problems with discussing empathy is that all the people who invoke it as this like high moral virtue are very arbitrary in how they're going to apply it and who they think is worthy of it. And this is a problem. It's a problem that we're going to return to in short order, actually. But this is why, in case anyone's wondering, I'm anonymous with this channel, right? This is in my notes. Make sure that I get to stuff. There we go. This is why I'm anonymous. And it's kind of funny. It's true. I don't under this in this podcast under this name, I don't post nearly as much stuff as I could or would like to. But if I ever did, the things that I would podcast about would be on the level of the Charlie Kirk content, maybe in some ways even more extreme, because as a libertarian, I don't worship the state, and that is enough, as we saw in COVID, to get you really, really hated by a lot of people. So I'm anonymous, and the Charlie Kirk fiasco, if I can put it in such tame terms, is one reason why, because I do believe it's important for people to be able to say the raw, unadulterated truth. And, I give props to Charlie. He had the courage to go out and do that. So I guess in a sense, I don't I don't view myself necessarily as a coward per se, but I feel that if I'm going to really be honest with people and say what needs to be said, um, I can't do that if I think I want to be hunted down and shot while giving a presentation or something somewhere. So, yeah, in fact, I recently posted to my Facebook that I've actually, in my time, been the recipient of many death threats, probably over 100. I mean, I haven't counted them actually, and it's not going to be an easy thing for you to figure out from watching this, because I'm the Philosopher King 2.0. It's pretty well veiled. I suppose if anyone really cared, they could figure it out, who I actually was. But there was a time when I wouldn't say I was a national player or anything quite of that level, but I had some national exposure. How about we'll say that. And yeah, I received death threats too. And I don't necessarily think they were credible per se, but when you receive a certain number of those kinds of things, you begin to think about taking precautions. And I can't afford a security detail, so the Philosopher King is anonymous. And it's a shame that we have come this far, but that's a different topic. The point is, the people who would have killed me or harmed me or tried to undermine my family's well-being are all the people who emphasize empathy. They believe that whatever, it doesn't matter what they believe. We're going to kind of come back to around to that, but the point is that they feel so strongly. Here, I know how I'll put it. One of the things that you need to do if you want to be a truthful person in society is you have to be willing to condemn certain behaviors, certain attitudes, and you have to be prepared to rebuke toxic aspects of our society. And unfortunately, these attributes are very commonly held by the people that we're talking about. So, well, not I'm trying to figure out how to parse the words. It isn't necessarily because I'm like afraid of saying them, because I'm already cloaked in anonymity, but because I want to be clear about it. We're dealing with people who have a worldview that essentially elevates every single victim that exists. If someone is a victim in any sense, they rush to their defense. Now, if that particular group, that subgroup, is a group that has toxic elements that have to be repudiated by the rest of us, like for example, if they happen to be turning into the newest trend of mass shooters, if you wanted to call attention to that, if they had to choose between rebuking them for shooting people or rebuking somebody else for condemning them for shooting people, they'll say, well, who's the victim? And in that case, in their mind, the victim is the person who is being told that they're bad. Now, in my world, in my universe, if you're going around shooting kids, forget about Charlie Kirk. He's a grown man. You can say whatever you want about the guy. But 8 or 10 year olds, right? 8 or 10 year olds. There's no way that an 8 or 10 year old should not qualify as a victim, and yet, for the worldview of the people that we're talking about in this, the 8 or 10 year old, because they are associated, I guess, with Christianity somehow by being at this Catholic school, you can shoot them and you can kill them, and you can consider yourself, like the Minneapolis school shooter did, a person of empathy, a good person, right? So there's a disconnect here that I'm going to try to explain a little bit as I get through here. But the challenge is we want to find a way to understand this so that we can do something about it. And that's really our problem right now, because as we are looking at the at our society right now, there are millions of people who have this worldview that elevates empathy to the highest level, but only very selectively, and is literally willing to cheer when people are assassinated, is literally prepared to look the other direction when children are caught in the crossfire. These are sick people. Yes, thank you for your comment, which is shows why empathy is not a good foundation for all morality. A point that we shall definitely return to. So I want to talk a little bit about the notion of empathy as a thing. So one of the accusations against Charlie Kirk, which I have prepared here, is this quote about empathy. So this apparently is a fact check. Snopes. When I was putting this together, I couldn't believe that I was doing anything with Snopes. What a bunch of hacks. Anyway, so the question is, did Charlie Kirk once say that empathy was a made-up New Age term? And he did, although there was more context. Let's get down here a little bit to the quote where it was. Okay. So this is the area. I'll make it a little bit bigger here so you can, read it if you want. This is what Charlie Kirk actually said. Let me just take a quick moment and mention. So you see the wise man in the bottom left of your screen. If you are new to this podcast, you know that usually there's a dark splotch there, and that's because I conceal my identity there. But I decided that if I'm just going to conceal my identity anyway, I should just put a dude there. And so that's what I've done. If you find it distracting that he is like moving around or whatever, let me know. I could just pause it. I'm just curious about what people will think about that. Anyway, so here's the quote, what he actually said. In the context, he's making a political statement. He's not addressing specifically, like he's not like going into a great detail about empathy. It's not like he's written an essay about empathy. He's on a podcast when he says that. And it's easy to just sort of make like one-off comments. But the point is, I keep saying that, the crazy thing is that when Kirk was killed, it was like a whole bunch of lemmings just automatically leapt to taking a series of his comments and isolating them. And apparently, and this is one of the like three. The other one was the gun one, which I'll probably talk about too, at least a little bit. And like the lemmings are like, I hate Charlie Kirk. I don't know why. Please tell me, mainstream media. Please tell me, people who spoon fed me stuff. I need to know why should I be happy about this? Oh, he said something a little bit off color about empathy. Well, then I have no empathy for him. But it's interesting if you look at what he did say here. Forget about the overall context, but just look at the statement. I think empathy is a made up new age term that does a lot of damage. Well, we're witnessing it do a lot of damage, right? Like people who claim to be empathetic are literally shooting people and murdering them. I would say that qualifies as doing a lot of damage. But as for it being new, actually it is new. As a word, as a concept, well, I don't know. Maybe I won't say concept, but certainly as a word, it is new. I read through this before, and I've seen this. I was researching this even before all this stuff happened, ironically. But you can see that maybe it goes back to 1858. There's a German word. I don't know if we're going to count a German word translated into English is still being as old as 1858. But by about 1909 or so, right here, the word entered the English lexicon. That's pretty new, right? That's pretty recent in the realm of things. That's less than 120 years. Now, depending on your views on when humanity entered the scene of history, you're looking at between 10,000 and 150,000 years of where, how do I put this? People did not give a shit about empathy. Like it's like a totally new innovation. It's a moral innovation in a sense, right? And I'm not really being fair about it, but this is what Charlie said. It's like a new thing. It's entered our common use, and it was not. So it obviously had to have replaced and supplanted other things. It had to push out other things in order to take the place that it has right now. But I'm a little bit curious about what people would say if they found out. I'm talking about these people who champion empathy. If they found out that before 1900 or so, like literally no one ever talked about it. It's like it came up like whole cloth. And if we go through here, we find that it's to the degree that it is a term of importance, it's already covered by the idea of pathos. Here's what I was looking for here. Pathos, or to like to share in the suffering, right? So the point that Charlie was making, and I think this is legitimate. Like if you're going to be a reasonable person, and you can't see me waving my hand right now, but I'm like, I know who we're talking about here. We're not talking with reasonable people here. Let's just show you again. Let's show you the chick. Here we go.
Psychopath alert.
Do you know why?
So just be respectful, please. That's all.
Violence, because people are so divided. They do not want this. Charlie did not advocate for empathy in his time of death. Charlie wanted guns to kill people. He said it himself. He said it was the price of having guns.
You're a psychopath.
You're a psychopath. Yeah, right. He didn't have empathy, so it's okay to kill him, right? Or you shouldn't feel bad about it anyway. So there you have it. But the kind of where I'm going with this is that she has elevated empathy to be the highest possible the pinnacle of morality, and you can't even do it. Like Charlie's point was, you can't actually enter into the actual lived experience of another person. All you can do is imagine it, and in imagining it, you can never do it justice, right? So that's why he preferred sympathy. I don't know how much we need to analyze it, but you know, sympathy I prefer more than empathy. And I think he talked about it, but like I said, we're not going to get into it. So the thing that they're like elevating is the very thing that's impossible. You can't do it. You just can't do it. So what is it then? If you can't actually enter into the actual lived experiences, and the suffering and pain of another person, what are you doing? I don't know. It's like it's like it's like moral masturbation is what it is. You're like jacking off to your own feelings about what you think somebody else is feeling. I'm sorry to be so crude and coarse about this, but all you're doing is patting yourself on the back for the feeling that you are a caring and compassionate person, when in fact you've like done nothing and could do nothing for that person's actual pain in any way of like really absorbing it and dealing with it. And so all you're really doing is you're congratulating yourself on being a nice person, just like that Minnesota trans shooter, right? He goes out and shoots a bunch of kids, kills a couple, and he says I'm a empathetic person. Okay, so that's pretty bizarre, I would say. So in that, when we're talking about people who have this viewpoint, and the fact that they can't actually experience the pain and suffering of another person, we've actually come around to the point that it's not the other person that they care about. Actually, it's their own feelings about the situation, and that's not impressive. And I have noticed and observed. I don't know if this is a throwaway comment or not, but a lot of the people who claim to be in support of empathy don't actually do anything to help the people that they say they want to help. Charlie Kirk was a Christian. The Christians have been known historically for example, creating many hospitals, charities, social organizations, anti-poverty programs over hundreds of years. What have these people done? What have they done? Not much. They haven't started a hospital, that's for sure. To my knowledge, like this woman, it's not really fair to take a college kid to task, I would say, because it's a little bit too young to expect them to start a hospital, for example. But certainly there's some older ones that this applies to. For the most part, what they generally do is they don't do anything themselves. They vote for politicians to go out and take money from other people and then do the things that they think are good. They basically vote for somebody else to do the good things that they don't have the time or trouble to do for on their own. Like it'd be one thing, it'd be an amazing thing, right? If they like volunteered left and right to go help these trans people out or whatnot. But no, they're not going to do that. They're just going to take money from other people to pay for programs that will help, they think, the trans people. I'm having trouble communicating. The point, they're not actually, there's no personal connection to any of the things that they're doing. They just have political positions, right? That's all it is. The whole extent of their actual compassion for their fellow man is when they go to the ballot box and they cast a vote. And then they hope that the people that they vote for do something good. And as a general rule, they hope that they get lots of money. They hope that they get free housing. They hope that they get free schooling. They hope they get free health care. But they're not going to do anything. And for this act of courage, this act of so-called empathy, they consider themselves the heroes of the moment. But it's an entirely new word. It's an entirely new idea. And it's probably an entirely new idea because up until the 1900s, nobody was so stupid as to think that they could actually enter into the experience of another person's soul. Like that's like a new thing. And it's an absurd thing. But I do want to make a point that is not very well. In fact, I don't think I've heard anyone say it ever by anyone else. I think this is just me. I backpedaled the idea that this is a new concept, and I took issue with the idea that no one can actually enter into the pain of another person. Not really. All you can do is imagine it. But in Christianity, you actually have the thing that they're idolizing, right? So from the book of Hebrews, let's get rid of that. This is in chapter 2. So Jesus being God, I highlighted the area here. Fitting that he, for whom and by whom all things exist. In other words, it was God. But it was fitting that he, in order to bring all the people into glory, should make himself perfect through suffering. For he who sanctifies and those who are sanctified all have one source. That is why he is not ashamed to call them brothers. And they quotes certain Bible passages there. And then a little bit further here. Since, therefore, the children share in flesh and blood, he himself likewise partook of the same things, that through death he might destroy the one who has the power of death, that is, the devil. Then there's another passage in chapter 4. Yeah, here we go. Highlight the area. Since then we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, Son of God. Let us hold fast to our confession, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, but is yet without sin. So it's crazy. What I've said so far is the problem with empathy as a concept is no one can actually do it. But the one who can do it is God. God can actually enter into the experience of other people, and then he can double down on it and actually enter into our world and suffer right alongside us and even be murdered, right? He can do all of that and absorb and interact with the pain and suffering of the people around. So Christianity, the very thing that they mock, the very thing that they deride, the very thing that our Minnesota trans shooter went out of his way to attack, that thing, that worldview is actually the only one that meets the criteria of the possibility of real empathy. The one that they hate so much is the one that gives them the thing that they supposedly want. Except for it's God and not man. So apparently it doesn't count. One of the compelling examples in the Bible that talks about the empathy that God has for people is in John 11. I have that prepared as well. So in this story, if you're not familiar with it, see, I'll move things around a little bit here. This is the story of the raising of Lazarus. So in this story, if you're not familiar with it, Lazarus is a good friend of Jesus and the disciples, and Martha and Mary are relatives that are in the same circle, and they find out Jesus is informed that Lazarus is ill, and he delays intentionally to go to Lazarus, and he kind of gives this cryptic comment about how he's delaying for the good of everyone, in the sense that it's going to be a way for him to demonstrate his own power. In other words, Jesus knows. Let's see here. Here's the cryptic comment. Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him. He knows that Lazarus is going to die. He's counting on it. He's planning on raising Lazarus from the dead in a way that is completely demonstrable, that no one is going to be able to refute. No one's going to be able to say, "Oh, well, he's working on it with a demon or whatever." This is it. And yet, when Jesus goes to the scene, he goes to the tomb, and the people come out. Mary came out. This is right here. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." It's not true in the sense that he didn't have to be there in order to save his life, but whatever. "When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, 'Where have you laid him?' They said to him, 'Lord, come and see.'" And in the shortest verse of the Bible, Jesus wept. Now, the astonishing thing about this episode is that Jesus knew all along that he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. He had no reason whatsoever to be concerned about this incident, to grieve for Lazarus. There's nothing in this that he does not plan on reversing, and yet in the face of all this suffering, in the face of this grief and mourning, Jesus nonetheless wept. And why? Because he's the only person in the universe who can actually empathize with any given human. He could feel it. He could enter into their pain and suffering. So the idea that Christians should be singled out as not being empathetic, as devaluing it, is just patently absurd. It's stupid on the level of almost wickedness, right? And that's why historically we've seen, if anyone's going to start a hospital, it's going to be the Christians. The very word hospital comes from a Christian order of knights called the Hospitallers. I guess I don't know how I'm saying that correctly, and so on and so forth. And I could go on and on and on about that, I suppose. But the people that we're dealing with, they don't know this, and I don't know who to blame for that. Do we blame the Christians for not communicating that, or do we blame them for being college students who don't know jack? Maybe they should get a real education. I mean, I don't know where we lay the blame for that, but they don't know it. They don't know it. But the problem that I think is more pervasive in this, if we bring up my notes again here, let's get rid of the this here. Yeah, my notes are not really in order. I'm just kind of skipping around a little bit. Is they have a worldview which, as one of the commentators has said, the and like if we go back and match up when his comment came through, he says shows why empathy is not a good foundation for all morality. So this is the problem. They don't have a foundation for morality. They've got nothing. All of the reasons that they might have for being able to order whether or not something is good and proper has been completely eroded by our postmodern society. It's been like a poison. What did Dan Dennett say about Darwinism? A universal acid, I think. And I think it does go back to that. Dan Dennett, what was the name of his book? Some of the evolutionary ethics. I have it on my shelf over here, but I'm not going to go get it. He talks about how Darwinism is a universal acid that eats away through everything. And one of the things that it has eaten through is all notions of all the old ideas of what is moral. So the problem with morality that is hard to grasp unless you've like tried to be intelligent is that it's not usually the case that things are just always cut and dried. You have to like prioritize certain things. You have to order them. You have to give a little bit more weight in certain circumstances to XYZ, and in other circumstances you have to be able to do it for ABC. And in order to do that, you have to have certain important guideposts. Like, for example, that life is intrinsically valuable and you're not allowed to take it except for cause, right? That would be an example of a guidepost. They don't have that because according to their worldview, just to focus on this idea of the life thing, according to their worldview, what is a human anyway? A human is just an organic creature that recently sprang out of pond scum and has no value. When they die, we're just going to turn into mud and dirt and slop. And there's no meaning or rhyme to life whatsoever. So if you kill somebody, well, what's the real harm? You're only sending them to a place that they're already going to be going eventually, and they are too. In other words, the whole value of life under their scheme has been completely undermined. So what happens is, and we could go through all of it. Maybe I should go use it as an example. The stuff about guns. So let me do that. This podcast is not about guns today. Sorry, I just have to pull it up myself here. Here we go. All right, get rid of the notes. I'm not trying to contextualize everything that Kirk said, but this is there's like 3 or 4 things that all of the liberal psychos just almost like NPCs regurgitated. And his one comment about gun deaths, he had this one about the the empathy thing. Anyway, that's all they had. So they all obediently trumpeted out whatever was being fed to them. But the full quote here is down here, and I'm bringing this up really not to talk about the guns so much as the idea of prioritizing moral principles. And what would be a good thing to use? Here we'll go with this paragraph right here. And it looks like I need to move it onto the screen a little bit better. So let's do that. So this is the full context. And now if you have a problem with his argument here, the problem is probably with you. You're probably not very intelligent. sorry. I told you at the very beginning of this podcast that I don't have a lot of quote empathy for some of the stuff that I've seen out there. Um, so I apologize. Okay, I apologize. I shouldn't have said a mean thing about my viewers, whom I don't even know. But anyway, so the point is, he's talking about the use of violence, right? And it's about self defense, yeah, but it's about defending yourself against a tyrannical government, right? It's right here. And he says, if this is a problem to you, you probably haven't read any 20th century history, which is, I would think, a pretty good, valid point. We've got all these people are running around claiming that Trump is literally Hitler, and yet they want to confiscate all of the guns from the people. So you actually believe, supposedly, that our government is populated by literal Nazis, and you think the wise course of action is to disarm yourself in the light of that threat? Where is your brain? So obviously we know that you don't actually believe that Trump is Hitler. What you actually want is you want to get rid of the guns, and you're willing to say whatever is needed to say. That's what all it really comes down to. You're just being manipulative Machiavellians. We know that you don't actually believe that Trump is Hitler or that there are literal Nazis running around. Those are just the things that you say in order to try to get what you want politically. I get that. But if you do look at, like, if you are acting in good faith on this, and you do look at 20th century history, let's look at it. You've got the Armenian genocide of approximately 19, well, it was not, we'll say 1910 to 1915, although they were already killing Armenian Christians long before that. And interestingly, some of the few Armenians that survived the genocide at the hands of the Young Turks holed up in a city called Musadag, and they fought off the Turkish army with like rifles and stuff. So they say, like, little, like, non-military stuff. They say you're not able to do that. Actually, like, that we should be prepared to give up our guns, because who could possibly resist the American government? Yeah, the Taliban would like to say something to you, but also the Armenians of Musadag. And when almost all of the Christians in Turkey were killed, the ones who were left, the only ones who lived, the only ones who remained to repopulate the Armenian people, not counting the expatriates, of course, were the ones who in Musadag, who, when the Turkish government said you need to give up your guns, did not. Now, a Christian, an Armenian Christian, if you were to ask them, well, can you just go around and shoot people? They're going to say, no, that's stupid, right? But there's a priority. They say, well, we have to weigh the moral virtues here. We have to figure out how they fit. And it just so happens that because life has value, and maybe, yes, we have to obey a government, but that doesn't mean we have to obey a government when that government says we're going to kill all the people in your city. And in fact, you have a right to defend yourself in that context, right? That's 20th part of 20th century history. And this is what I mean about the problem with trying to, when empathy becomes the last moral virtue and there's like nothing left, is you lose the capacity to recognize that when you're making moral judgments, there are a variety of competing moral arguments that all need to be reconciled, and you need a framework to work that all out, right? And so with guns, for example, guns would be right up there. It would be wonderful to be in a world where governments did not exist that would go around murdering their own people by the millions. But that is not actually the world that we live in. Therefore, we have to ask, well, what could we do to prevent such outcomes, right? And so defending yourself with lethal force is one of those things which reluctantly, I would say most of the times they would say reluctantly, has to be um applied. You have to be ready to do that. So they don't have the ability to do that. They can't weigh this. They've lost all of the framework that would allow them to work through these things. Let me, before I go further to Charlie's examples here, 20th century history, right? I talked about the Armenian genocide. There was the Rwandan genocide, which is even more recent. That was like 1990, 96. In that case, like more than 1 million people were killed in the span of like a month, and they weren't killed by being shot. They were literally hacked to death with machetes. They had been disarmed decades ago, and so when it came down to it, the ones who lived or died were just the ones who had the machetes or not. And as an anecdote, it was China that gave all of the machetes to the people who did the murder. But we'll just sort of leave that aside. But that was only like 25 years ago, 30 years ago. So this is like these kinds of things really happened in the 20th century. And you just know that the other people, the people who were murdered, there's the Houthis and the Tutsis. I don't know how to actually say them. If I remember correctly, it was the Tutsis that were the ones that were killed. I don't remember. Sorry, it's a little bit late for me. Whatever. If they had guns, they would not have been hacked to death. This is the point. And obviously, if the Jews had guns in World War II, they wouldn't have been thrown around into concentration camps, right? And if the people of Russia and Romania and China and Cambodia had firearms, they would not have been murdered by the millions either. So, I mean, so that's like the reality. And I suppose probably, given our education system, these people actually don't know about any of the things that I just said. Like they know about the Jews in the concentration camps, and that seems to be the only thing they know about. They don't know about how Stalin and Lenin starved to death millions of people. They don't know about Mao and his Cultural Revolution. They literally don't know. They just don't know. They have no idea. So Charlie tries to use an example of here. We already have people dying on the road from just driving. And people, so you weigh that, right? You have to weigh. It isn't just a question of transportation. It's a question of like liberty. Do we have the right as a people to say, well, gee, if we allow people to be mobile in this way using cars, literally tens of thousands of people will die, and we say yes, right? That particular case, we're able to sort through from a moral point of view. The empathy psychos are able to sort through it only because they don't think about anything at all. They are almost all, to a man, NPCs, but because they like to get around, so they just intuitively say, yeah, we're willing to pay that price. But the point is with it is that if you try to do this in any kind of systematic way, you quickly find that you have to track it back to moral virtues that rest somehow on some sort of framework of reality, whether it's the existence of God, maybe a utilitarian ethic, somehow you've got to ground your moral system on something in order to make these judgments. But they have tossed out all of those things. There's none left. The universal asset has worked. They have nothing left anymore whatsoever in order to evaluate whether or not this or that is moral. They cannot do it. The only thing that they have left, the one thing that they have left, is the feelings in their own bellies. Does something make them feel good, or does it make them feel bad? And it makes them feel good if you're standing up for a victim. And it doesn't matter if there's other victims, like the children who are shot by the trained shooter and the families or whatever. They just they have to pick a victim. That makes them feel good. And that's all it takes. That's it. That's literally all they have left. Basically, we're like the hormones that go through their bodies when they have a good thought. And that is not strong enough to hold a society together. It is not strong enough to keep people reasonable and rational. Rational. It's not that empathy, even if it is sort of made up more recently, is intrinsically bad, even if it's unattainable. But it's like a lot of the other moral things where you have to put it in a context. You have to be able to weigh where things rate in the hierarchy of things. So you say, for example, do I feel bad that trans people are unhappy that they can't go into a woman's bathroom, for example, right? There's that thought. Do I feel bad? Yes, I feel bad that they don't feel like they belong. Do I feel bad that children are murdered at school? Well, apparently that doesn't make them feel very bad. But let's assume, for the sake of discussion, that it does. Then you have to, in that scheme, you have to be prepared to say, I'm sorry that you feel bad that we're not going to let you go into a girl's locker room, but we're not going to let you do that, and we're also not going to let you shoot little kids. We're not going to let you assassinate people. Right? And that's the part that that's the part that they can't do. The part where you say, I feel bad for you, but you can't do this. They can only do the I feel bad for you. And so it becomes necessarily arbitrary based just on the prism of the particular person who supposedly feels it. So I have some comments coming in through here. Well, a commenter says, I remember getting into an argument with a chick on Twitter, claimed that pro-life advocates truly don't believe in their hearts that unborn babies are actually human. I think these thoughts are probably two separate things. Their worldview really boils down to whatever I feel, and they think we should take that position as well. Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. And as far as the other one goes about whether or not they think unborn babies are actually human, that's another one of the things that Charlie Kirk was called on. Yeah, and whether you agreed with him or not, he believed that all human life has value, and so you're not allowed to kill it. And there are people who want to kill humans that are inconvenience to them, right? So the in the old days, you could have conversations about these things in the sense that, like, if you go back to like pre-1900, before the Frankfurt School and whatnot. If you don't know the Frankfurt School, I looked that up. Before postmodernism thoroughly torched the moral order, you could have a reasonable differences about, well, where are we going to draw these lines? But now you're not allowed to draw any lines at all. There are no lines. You can't have any lines. Right? That's our problem. That's where we've come. That's the moral bankruptcy that we've come, and it comes through the philosophies of the age, right? You can't go around telling people that that there's nothing real, that a human is nothing more than lately emerged from pond slop. We're all just matter and whatnot. Nothing is real, nothing is true, and not have consequences like these kinds of things. You just can't do it, because and I think maybe I should start wrapping this up, because whether you like it or not, people actually are what they are. And if you tell them that nothing is real, they're still going to look for a way to feel that they are living lives of purpose and that their actions have meaning and value, right? And so, having been deprived of that by the philosophies of the time, they basically invented, they emphasize this empathy thing, right? They have to fill in that void. And the problem is, the thing that they're filling it in with can't meet the task. It can't do it. It can't do the job, right? So, all right. Looking at my notes here. Okay. Doing all right, I guess. So this brings me to like where we're at. Like, what are we going to do about all this stuff? What is causing it? It's the schools, man. It's the schools. And this is a little bit simplistic, but basically that's what it is. This is a really good example here, right? This is from the Seattle School District. Just read it here. Seattle School. I screenshotted this. I actually don't remember where I got it from, but it was not long ago. Seattle Public Schools works to provide a wide range of educational opportunities that reflect who students are, help them build empathy for others, and prepare them to be compassionate citizens of a diverse and changing world. Therefore, there is no option for people to, for parents to get their kids out of going into these classes where they talk about trans, or, I mean, God only even knows. God himself might not even know how many categories of genders there are anymore. This is just one illustration, one anecdote. This is the public schools of Seattle, and it gets worse when you get into the college stuff. Let me ask you this. Do you think that the purpose of a school should be to teach empathy? Right? Because that's much different than the purpose of school when I was going through school. And it's certainly far different from school prior to, say, 1920, before John Dewey got his hands on things. It used to be that a school was for basically just giving people skills and information and knowledge so that they can make their own decisions and chart their own path through the world. And so that's why we had the so-called liberal arts curriculum, where you gave kids a broad understanding of a lot of different things, with the expectation that if they wanted to go further in education, they would zero in on certain things. But a lot of kids were done by 8th, 9th grade or whatever, because they'd already received all that they needed. And you know what? They did pretty damn well. Actually, they built this civilization on a school system that just focused on conveying information, more or less. It didn't try to build empathy for others, or prepare people to. It didn't try to mold people into being citizens. That didn't occur until John Dewey. So there's no way we're gonna be able to get out of this mess through reason and rationality. The people that we're talking with, I've called them NPCs, and I feel a little bit bad about that. Because I hate to think that way about any of my fellow humans. But seriously, like they they just repeat slogans, right? Like they actually act like they're programmed. It's like, if I were them, I would be ashamed Like, oh, why do I not like Charlie Kirk? Oh, he said something bad about empathy. So yeah, I guess it's all right if we kill him. I mean, how can you be any kind of decent person and like accept that whole chain? I just don't get it. So you basically have to write off almost this entire generation. They're lost. They're gone. And what we can only hope that in 5 to 10, 15 years, if we could stop coddling them, they will um, encounter what we might call real life, the world that the rest of us have had to encounter, and realize that not everything is as simple as wow, I can resolve this just by patting myself on the back and calling myself a great person and calling everybody else Hitler, because in the real world you find out that not everyone you disagree with is a Nazi, and they still haven't figured that out. But in the meantime, that's what they're learning in school, right? The media is giving it to them through lots of different formats, but in the school system, that's what they're learning. This is what they're hearing. It's not about math. In fact, we've learned over the last 15 years that math is racist, right? Over the last 15 years, we learned that reading books to your kids is racist. We've learned that all sorts of things are racist and bigoted, which are just ordinary aspects of reality, basically. And those people, the people who have been immersed in that system, are now, approaching 30. I guess we would say it started, this phase probably started in the mid 1990s. So I would have already been through, and you just can't shake it. They're going to have to figure it out on their own. But in the meantime, if we want to reverse things, the best peaceful way is you can't talk to them, you can't argue with them. Don't even try. Just don't. What you got to do is you got to get involved in your local school board. You have to get in there and you have to say, you know what, this curriculum that doesn't teach anyone math or grammar or science or geography, but instead teaches that everyone's a victim. That curriculum's shit. We're not going to do it. And then when all the liberals come for you, you say, I'm sorry, I'm not changing my vote. We're just not having that curriculum. Or state representatives who have some ability to exercise oversight over the universities, same thing. Make the schools a place where schooling happens, not indoctrination. It's not about molding people into be citizens. It's equipping people to be free thinkers who have the at least the rudimentary essentials in order to enter the world and engage it intelligently. That's what we want. That's all we should want. So we are a long way from that, and I have not seen anyone else talking about that. I've seen obviously some people complaining about the school systems in general and their complicity in this, but they're not going to the next step and saying, okay, if you don't like it, if you want to change it, if you want to reverse it, you've got to get involved. Instead, you've got people talking almost like they're gearing up for like a civil war or something, which, anyone who's studied civil wars, and I have, knows you do not want. It is not a good idea. We do not want that. There is a way through this, but it's not, you can't get there just by flipping a switch. You actually have to take the time and effort to get involved at the local level at minimum and work your way up from there. There's no shortcut. This is what you got to do. And then maybe we can get through all of this without people being like shot in the street or shot in their church, just sitting there like these kids in Minnesota where there's actually been several shootings like that by trans people, and we haven't even gotten into the other crazy psychos who do mass shootings for their own purposes that have nothing to do with the trans type of stuff. We'll even go ahead and call them the white supremacists, although I'm not sure that's thoroughly accurate. So I'm gonna sign off. I've said quite a bit. People are coming in and out. I can see. Are there any questions? I should have asked people if there are any questions or things that they would like me to respond to. I'll go ahead and give a minute and let you type that out if you wanted. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to talk about. It is really bizarre that I could talk about these things, and if my name surfaced and I became prominent somehow or whatnot, someone will like, well, we should shoot him for that. And half the country would be like, yeah, we're really glad that guy was killed. Okay, well, I'm not seeing anything coming through, so we're not going to belabor it. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. I have a lot to say about a lot of things, but not always a lot of time to talk about it. So you're not going to be flooded with notifications, but hit the notification bell anyway so that you can hear when I post something. The funny thing is I was working on this podcast like a month ago, before the Minnesota shooter and before the Charlie Kirk thing. So it just kind of changed things. The actual video that I was going to be posting was going to be about in defense of the right to drink raw milk. And then the world blew up. And I was like, well, I think I'm going to just wait on that one. What's my second favorite color that begins with the letter T but rhymes with warp? Is my cue to say thanks again for watching. Auf Wiedersehen, good night, goodbye. This is the Philosopher King 2.0. Have a good night. Bye.